bit different. I'm sure I'm going to end up picking the mic up as we read. But, yeah, I figured why not try to crank the gain up a little bit. I don't think it's picking the fan up too much. If it's a problem, we can always turn it down, and we'll do what we've been doing. But this way, it should actually register my mouth a little bit. And also, maybe, just maybe, I'll remember to pop that out when it's time to read. Because I have it, and I always forget it. I do kind of like the voice more like this, though. That is the benefit of holding it, or getting really close to it. Choices. Yeah. Anyway, today's theme, today's stories are going to be personal favorite. Yeah, you probably guessed it. Sci-fi. Yippee. I love sci-fi. So, that's what we'll do. So make sure that you grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your beverage of choice. And let's get cozy. Let's do what we do. Let's read some stories and have a nice time together. Our first one, and I'm going to hold the mic. I'm going to hold the mic mainly because it's a really weird angle to try to read. Maybe I should move things around on the desktop, but it is what it is. We'll be back home in roughly a week with our normal setup, our normal sound. I feel like maybe I do need to turn the gain down, like kind of peaking it a little bit. Maybe that's better. I don't know. I'll try to be mindful of it. Maybe I'll try to speak softer. Okay. Here we go. Sergeant Major Ivan. When we went through the wormhole gate to K9B7, a life-sustaining planet the size of Saturn, we couldn't have dreamed of what we would face. There was, of course, some reliability to the pretense of fear, confusion, the unknown, and hostile contact. This was a whole new world. A revolutionary discovery for science and astronomy, signs of life, possibly structures visible from initial scans. So, when they sent one company of rangers to scout the region around the gate, let's just say we were concerned. But that concern quickly turned to fear and distress when half of the 3rd Company, 941st Army Ranger Battalion, did not arrive at the AO. We did not panic. We are Rangers. We make others panic. Sergeant Major Ivan Hawthorne would not allow panic in his company. He was too stone-cold killer to let the sentiment rest in our minds. Company Commander Gibson, and just shy of half of the company, made contact with our element 6 hours after the initial insertion to the AO. Due to some galactic trickery or malfunction, Earth side of the gate, they had been They had been disposited far outside of the AO, other side of the planet far. Initial radio contact had their element moving overland on foot and advancing on what seemed to be a structure of some kind. Seeing as how all of our aerial and land transport were only now coming through the gate on our side of the world, we did not see them reaching us anytime soon, and that was an understatement. 18 hours then, and Commander Gibson establishes radio link again. Hostile contacts have engaged in danger close scenarios. He reports several life forms from insectoids to reptilian predators that stalk the flora and undergrowth. The structure was a tower of some kind, hewn from stone and hollow inside. Bridges of stone block crisscross the hollow interior of the tower. Estimations put the tower at being a football field in diameter inside. 23 hours in, we've lost all contact with our separated element as of 21 hours. Further ranger companies have arrived and we have been cleared to advance towards and retrieve our lost rangers. The full combat load, NVG snipers, and a full medical team on standby. The trip would take 7 hours in the high-speed hover carriers. Arrival at the tower was utter chaos. Company transponders marked the missing element as spread out halfway up the absolute giant tower. By giant, I'm talking about brushing the clouds giant. We circled the base without finding a place to access that tower without landing. All we could see were fires spreading from several explosion points amidst the foliage. The sergeant major ordered the pilot to get us to the top of the tower and see if we could work our way down to the commander's group. We were lucky. At the top of the tower, there was an old platform just large enough for a single carrier to land and offload its contingent of rangers. Sergeant Major was the first off with the weapons team. From the platform, there spanned an almost medieval bridge to the interior of the wall tower. No railing, no sides, just a straight drop down through a rolled mess of bridges and smoke. Comms came alive. Commander Gibson was on the line. Night call. Night call. Hostile elements are making another push. Reaper 1, engage with the Carl G. Demo the bridge below us if you have to. They can not over this position. Far below, almost out of view, amidst the tangle of crossways, gunfire could be seen, and some strange green and blue flashes of light crossed back and forth between the sides of the tower and along the bridges. I would later understand that the green and blue flashes were chemical fireballs launched by the reptilian, spider, lamprey-like creatures assaulting the commander and his people. Sergeant Major Ivan wasted no time. Rifle teams were ordered down into the tower. Weapons teams followed up and took covering positions above us as we progressed down the interior of the tower. I should note here that each bridge connected to a sloping ramp lined with tunnels and doors set into the walls of the tower. Old rotting doors of wood hung limply from iron hinges. The smell was awful. Decay and musty old wet wood covered in rot and mold. Every few hundred feet, the ramp ended into another bridge. The descent took forever. As we drew closer to the lost units of our company, we could hear and see the battle in greater detail. Gunshots, grenade explosions, and then came the roars and loud hissing screeches. We didn't know at that time we were going to be facing when we relieved the commander, but it did not sound like a puppy in a park. We met up with the uppermost edge of the formation, and they looked haggard. Not PT until you die on your feet haggard, but 3 days without sleep and constant combat haggard. We found out later on that they hadn't only gotten dropped off around the planet, but somehow 2 days earlier than the rest of us. They had been fighting and humping the terrain for more than 3 days, without anything more than the ammo in their kits, MREs and the rocks in the water collected, purified, and distributed by the one purifier someone had snuck along in his rucksack. Back to the fight, we slipped by the upper edge of our company, sending them upwards to the carriers above. Sergeant Major was on the line with Commander Gibson, walking and talking sit-rep the whole way down. We passed Reaper 1. 3 Rangers with a Carl G launcher and an M107 50 caliber sniper rifle. Faces drawn, eyes bright with hatred and adrenaline. As we passed by, the sergeant in charge of the team muttered, "Creepy crawlies died as well as anything else." He wasn't looking at us, just staring down the scope of his 50 cal, hard, to the core. Commander Gibson was propped against the doorway. Deep wounds ran through his armored plate carrier. One hand was gone, and there was a bad burn on his right ear, or rather where his ear should have been. But his still held his G-18 service pistol and stared death and domination down the corpse-strewn ramp beyond the barricade of debris they had built. Sergeant Major, Commander Gibson's voice was hoarse and dry. We are nearly black on everything heavy enough to stop the charge of the creatures when they come. We need to enact fighting withdrawal, effective immediately. All business. Missing hand, deep wounds didn't matter, just another Tuesday for the Rangers. The Carl G thundered above us, and the 50 cal spat green-tipped death at something that didn't have the intelligence to realize that it didn't stand a chance against those rounds, but still they came. Somewhere behind and above us, a weapons team opened up with a 240B, spitting 7.62 downrange and withering bursts. Screams of dying and butchered creatures rose from the ramp before us. My rifle team had followed, with the Sergeant Major, intent on relieving the exhausted and spent Rangers at the barricade. As the first thing rounded the bend and the ramp, Rangers opened for business. 5.56 rounds punched holes into thin leathery hide and spattered hissing purple blood into the air. They flooded the ramp. Hundreds of them, as big as a Rottweiler, smoky gray skin, large lamprey-esque mouths dripping white drool as they galloped as if on spindly legs with 3 long claws for hands. We slaughtered them, but they kept coming. Behind us were flashes of green fire and a concussion. Boom. The weapons team was gone. A breed of these creatures with lighter hides were able to launch chemical fire bombs from their round mouths, and our weapons team just took one to the, everything. Commander Gibson pushed off from the wall and keyed his mic. Nickel, we're falling back to the top of the tower. Reaper 1 area denial rounds. I want teams setting claymores as we leapfrog up the interior. Move it, Rangers. He turned and, at nearly point blank, dumped his entire magazine into the slavering mouth of a beast that had somehow bypassed all of the incoming fire. Stone cold killer. Commander Gibson holstered his G-18 and began to trot up the ramp and onto the bridge Reaper 1 held. A Carl G round smashed the bridge below us. I saw this as we backed out onto the bridge, firing into the oncoming horde. The flow of beasts slowed for a brief moment. They began jumping the gap made in the bridge. We ran, leapfrogging the rifle teams behind us, setting claymore mines and C4 charges that would slow momentarily the flood of lamprey creatures. They had begun to scale the walls of the tower, their long claws digging in and finding purchase in the old crumbling stone. We realized this first when Corporal Jakes was pulled down from the side of the bridge we were on. The creatures lunged over the edge, spearing him with one of its clawed hands, and began to pull him towards the edge. Jakes didn't scream. He roared while pulling the pin on a grenade. He rolled it into the ramp that we had just left and then ruined the beast, killing him with a sidearm. They both went over the edge, falling into the foggy distance. The climb up that tower would drain a person on a good day, but in the midst of battle, loaded with armor, ammo, and supplies, being chased by hungry beasts, it was so much worse, and they were gaining on us. As we neared the final few bridges, we could hear and sometimes see the carriers lifting off to make room for unloaded carrier to land and pick up Rangers. But they were on our heels, following us out into every bridge, their screams and roars echoing all down the tower. Reaper 1 made a choice then. They would stand and hold, buying enough time for the rest of us to make it out. Commander Gibson stared hard at them for a moment before nodding once and continued to wave wounded, spent, and flagging rangers forward to the carriers. Reaper 1 held. For long seconds they held, as creatures tore over each other and made a mad, crazed frenzy to get at the stalwart rangers. My team was the last in line to load up, nearly black on ammo, one grenade among us, but no quit at all. I calmed Sergeant Major Ivan and requested the go-ahead to relieve Reaper 1 and get them out. We were on one bridge above them, and standing under the whirling blades of the carrier. Sergeant Major considered us briefly, then swapped the magazine in his carbine and swept past us towards the ramp leading to Reaper 1. "Come on, Sergeant Lane. We've got some rangers to bring home." Then he rounded into the ramp and we were after him. I left half the team on our bridge to fire down at the horde and help alleviate the pressure we could face. Then, at a trot, we pursued the Sergeant Major. When we arrived behind Reaper 1, they were being overrun. We spread out, firing past our men of the charging beasts. Sergeant Major Ivan was dragging the sergeant from Reaper 1, his chest bloody from teeth marks. We fell back, covering and running. As we made it up the last stretch of the final bridge, a ranger behind me had his leg blown away suddenly by a green flash of chemical fire. Less explosive, but much more corrosive. I slid to a halt, turned, and as I grabbed his carry handle and pulled, I looked up into the maw of a beast. Then it explodes into gouts of purple blood as Sergeant Major stepped past me firing his carbine. He was smooth and precise. He waved me back as I pulled the ranger into the last carrier. I saw Sergeant Major pop 2 frags and drop them at his own feet. He then ran, the boom of the grenades chasing its retreat form. As his feet touched the ramp to the carrier, it lifted off, and I barely caught his arm as I threw him off balance. Later I would hear him mutter, "We still got boys down there. We'll be back, and we'll burn that tower into a hole in the world these creatures have never seen. Kill them real good." So I'm going by like the top rated on the subreddit, and that was number 1, and I had high hopes. It seems like almost like some like Warhammer fanfic, which is kind of cool, I guess. Space Marines and all that. It wasn't bad, but there were so many typos in it. I feel like that would be me if I were an author, by the way. Whenever I text anyone, even if I'm on the computer, I will manage to slip in a handful of typos or like the completely wrong word. I'll leave out an ing, or I don't know. It's bad. So I can critique it, but I have no leg to stand on whatsoever. Anyway, this one is titled "Everybody Comes Back." Again, we're doing science fiction today. Last night we did horror. Today seems like a good day for science fiction. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. It would be better if it was Friday. Sci-Fi Friday has a nice ring to it. Not that would even be in the title. Anyway. "Open your eyes, child. You're home." A voice boomed, seeming to come from every direction. It didn't work. My head hurts. An entire bottle of codeine followed by a vodka chaser won't do that. Carla must have found me passed out and called an ambulance. Carla. Now I have to explain why I did this to her, to my parents, to everybody. That's going to be an awkward Facebook post. I cracked my eyes open by a sliver, wincing already from the painfully bright overhead lights. You didn't call anybody yet, did you? I managed. But they must have. That's got to be hospital policy. Who did I list as next of kin? I think if I filled that form out when I was a teenager, it'll be mom or dad for sure. When my vision came into focus, I laughed. Out of shock mostly, but also because it had to be a prank of some kind. The source of the voice turned out to be a short, balding man that looked to be in his 40s, dressed up in an angel costume. His assistant, a tall and curly-haired fellow with a smile that revealed entirely too much of his gums, was wearing an angel costume as well. The halos just kind of floated there. Thin wire or something. I couldn't knock the quality. The wings were made of real feathers and looked expensive. Is this for a TV show? I muttered. The squat, balding man suddenly stretched out his wings. I clapped, sincerely impressed. I have never seen these things before. There was a cosplayer who custom builds them for like $500 a pop. Mostly it's furries who buy them. You died. Welcome to the kingdom of heaven. He gestured towards the far wall, which split open before my eyes to reveal a landscape made of clouds with immense pearly gates. To one side of the gate stood a figure which I assumed was meant to be St. Peter. My jaw hung open. No way. The taller of the two angels asked me what was wrong. Well, I mean, am I really dead? This is really happening right now. I never believed in any of this. The taller angel shot a concerned look to the short, balding one. It says in your profile that you attended Catholic private schools and were confirmed at 14. There's no indication that you ever apostatized. I bit my tongue for a moment, worried perhaps I'd been led into heaven by some sort of clerical error and was blowing it. But then I realized the absurdity of celestial beings making clerical errors. Alright, who are you guys? I mean, really? Drop the act. They once again gave each other worried glances, and the taller one spoke. What? What makes you say that it's an act? I folded my arms and raised my eyebrows at him. Listen, guy, let's say I told you I'm the greatest person to ever live. If you believe that and spend the rest of your life worshiping me, you'll receive a fantastical reward. Yahoy, Yahoy, welcome in. The taller angel appended that it sounded pretty good so far, plainly bluffing, so I continued. The thing is, this supposed reward is conveniently unfalsifiable because it's after you die, but I assume that's not by design. This is the way things are. Likewise with the horrible punishment you'll suffer if you don't believe in me and you decline to worship me. Also if you begin at some point but then stop later in life. The balding angel shrugged and said he didn't see the problem, so I pressed the matter. Alright, next I'll tell you that if you doubt me, it's because of the influence of an invisible trickster whose existence I can't prove to you. So you should ignore your doubts and preemptively mistrust any evidence you might encounter that contradicts my claims. They both looked increasingly irritated, so I hurried along. I also tell you that the world's ending soon, but I don't say exactly when, so it always feels as if it could happen at any moment. Therefore, it's urgent for you to convince as many other people to worship me as possible while there's still time, so they receive the fantastic reward and avoid the horrible punishment. I urge you to sell your belongings, leave your home and job to follow me, and I tell you that if you love your mother or father more than me, you're not worthy of me. Do you believe all this? If not, what might I be trying to accomplish with such a complicated lie? The balding one objected. What if you performed miracles? I rolled my eyes. Only according to a book written by my followers, not corroborated by any contemporaneous writings. Then you may as well believe the accounts of miracles found in the Quran or Book of Mormon. The tall one chimed in. What if you predicted future events? I asked if both these predictions and their fulfillment were recorded after the fact, in a book written long after my death. He nodded sheepishly. Then it's easy to fake, I pointed out. My followers could just record what actually does occur, then alter the details of the original prediction so it matches up. After a couple of centuries, with no internet to preserve information, only that account of events will survive because my followers will have made sure to preserve it. Thank you. Appreciate it, Daniel. That's very sweet. I'm happy you find it soothing. That's the point of this channel, is to make it a nice, cozy, relaxing environment. So, very happy to hear that you enjoy it. The two of them, having apparently had enough, took off their halos. Fine, Mr. Smarty Pants. You're not in heaven. Happy now? But what I don't get is, how come your file says you died a Catholic? Our information is never flat out wrong. I explained that I lived my life as a Catholic despite not believing. I kept it to myself for the happiness of my family, and they would never accept me if they knew that I stopped believing, so I never wrote down that I would have really thought about it anyway. The two men now busily disrobed to reveal plain white uniforms under the robes and wings, which they hung up in a closet alongside multiple other types of costumes corresponding to the beliefs of other cultures. I dimly remembered some of them from when I took a world religions class. The pearly gates and cloudscape outside shimmered, then vanished. What replaced it was a stunning view of a city unlike any I had ever seen. Abstract white buildings, more closely resembling works of art or monuments than anything meant to be lived in, with transparent cubes carrying fast-moving water around in between them. As I watched, I could faintly make out people in bathing suits careening through the tubes, which I now figured for the most extreme water slide I've ever witnessed. Where am I really? Who are you people? Is this the future? The bald one gestured, and a trio of comfortable chairs rose out of the floor. The minute I got off the gurney, it sunk into the floor as if absorbed by it. At their insistence, I took the only open seat. Yeah, you might say this is the future, but you really are dead. Or rather, you were. That's impossible. I said as much. I don't believe in souls or spirits or whatever. It doesn't make sense. If science couldn't detect souls because they're immaterial and thus not interactive with the material universe, how could souls interact with our material brains and bodies in such a way as to control them? For that matter, what do we need such large, complex brains for if they're only signal receivers? They shook their heads. No spirits, nothing like that, just the truth of the matter is simultaneously more and less spectacular. Are you familiar with determinism? The word rang a bell, but I invited them to fill me in as I couldn't remember the particulars. He gestured, and some sort of three-dimensional visualization appeared in the midst of our chairs. I gasped, having never seen technology this advanced. Essentially, he said, the universe is more or less just a collection of particles, and those particles all behave in ultimately predictable ways. The image depicted a couple of atoms. One of the atoms collided with another, which changed the course and speed of both. If you have detailed information about the position, spin, and velocity of every particle within a given volume, you can predict every interaction and future state of those particles, however far into the future you care to compute. I nodded along. It's like falling dominoes. Knowing how particles interact, where they are, what they're doing, and how fast they're going allows you to predict where they will be, what they'll be doing, and how fast they'll be going a second later, or a minute, or year, a century. The animation sped up, now consisting of thousands of particles interacting with each other, but then it began to slow down until frozen, before it began to rewind. The principle is reversible, the former angel explained. If you know the position, spin, and velocity of every particle in a given volume, you can not only predict every future state and interaction between those particles, you can also reconstruct every prior interaction and state as far back into the past as you care to compute. The simulation continued to move in reverse faster and faster, though really, I'd never have known it was going backwards if I hadn't seen the reversal occur a moment earlier. That raised all sorts of questions in my mind about whether the direction of time's movement is a matter of perception. Questions the two men seated before me didn't answer, instead carrying on about particles, predictions, and computing power. Now, if the past and future interactions of a small set of particles are predictable, then necessarily the past and future interactions of any number of particles are predictable, no matter how numerous. It's just a question of how much computing power you have at your disposal. Nah, he couldn't mean. But he did. The visualization now depicted a network of satellites around each body in the solar system. It's not enough to just scan the Earth, of course, even down to the very last subatomic particle, because the Earth is not a perfectly closed system. There are external influencers which must be accounted for if the simulation is to yield accurate results. The entire solar system, mapped down to every last subatomic particle, impossible. But I suppose no more so than the technology I enjoyed in life, even though it would have seemed like magic to a pre-industrial peasant. To a chimpanzee, or even gunpowder or automobiles would seem miraculous. Once you've sufficiently accounted for all the variables, you've got yourself a simulation of Earth and all outside influences accurate enough that you can either predict the future or reconstruct the past as easily as you might fast forward or rewind a video. Indeed, a timeline slider appeared in which he was able to scrub back and forth through history. The planets whizzed around in their orbits with an almost imperceptible speed as the slider moved. He stopped at a point of apparent interest, then zoomed in on the Earth. Closer and closer, he zoomed into the North America continent until I could make out an old-fashioned town. He input the name Benjamin Franklin. A selection of possible matches popped up of people with that name, alive at that time. He chose one of them. The view immediately accelerated into one of the houses, and there he was. Not exactly as the history books depict, but close enough to be recognizable as the genuine article, having a beer with his buddies. Not only that, the tall one said. Watch this. He zoomed in further, and further, and further until I was looking at the individual cells comprising Ben Franklin's skin. Then, even further, until I was looking at a grid of atoms. Wait, so you can retrieve the exact atomic configuration of any body in history? The bald one corrected me. Subatomic, and not just people. Anything at all. The big picture began to form in my head, blurry initially, but sharpening little by little the more they clarified my situation. Now, as you might expect, he added, if a society has the technology needed to do all of this, they also have the technology needed to assemble particles into any desired configuration, or reassemble. I puzzled puzzled over the significance for a moment, then gasped. You could recreate him. Is Ben Franklin actually in this building? He shook his head. No, he's out somewhere living it up like you wouldn't believe. My gaze followed the direction he was pointing, and the city. So, this really is the afterlife, I marveled. They both nodded. Then why did you bother with the costumes? Why all the theatrics? They looked uncomfortable. Well, you see, most of the people we bring back died with certain expectations about the afterlife. They were very, very certain of those beliefs. If we tell them the truth, they become agitated, hostile, and suspicious. They cannot accept that they were wrong, so they become convinced that this isn't the real afterlife, that it's some sort of diabolical illusion that they're trapped in. That didn't seem entirely out of the question, even to me. So what? You put on the right costumes according to their religion, welcome them back from the dead, and send them where? He gestured again, and the visualization switched to a view into a golden palace more luxurious than I have any basis for comparison for. A man of Arab descent sat on a throne being fed grapes by an probably busty woman wearing only gilded slippers, diaphanous silk and jewelry. Dozens of other women with equally extreme body proportions lounged here and there, some on velvet cushions, others swimming about in a marble pool. Yana, the Muslim heaven, he exclaimed, barely concealing his pride. Nyahoy, nyahoy, welcome in. We spent more time than I care to admit designing all of this according to user feedback. Anything they said we got wrong was corrected. Then we deconstituted and reconstituted them from the exact moment of their death so they could experience it with fresh eyes, none the wiser. Their bodies made young, strong, and healthy, and any mental infirmary of old age is cured so they can properly enjoy themselves. The view changed into an interior view of a spaceship of some kind. Various happy, healthy-looking people in fancy robes conversed with stereotypical movie aliens. Gray skin, huge heads, almond-shaped black eyes. Heaven's Gate, he said. They wanted to catch a ride on a UFO, leave behind their old bodies, and ascend to the next level of existence with their alien buddies, so we made it happen. At least as far as they can tell. The view then switched to a bizarre series of stacked floating cities. Those higher up were made of more precious metals and gems, while those further down were increasingly drab. Mormon heaven, he explained. Celestial kingdom, terrestrial kingdom, telestial kingdom. It's enough to make your head spin. Whatever you might think of the Mormon church, they've got some really elaborate creative theology. I asked if that meant the ones who believed they would become gods of their own planets actually got to. He nodded. No actual people lives on those earths, however. They're like NPCs, but convincing them that you can't tell the difference. We also only recreate instances of Earth itself for those people, not a replica of the entire universe, too conceptually expensive. I rubbed my chin, lost in thought until the last bit made my ears perk up. Computationally expensive. What do you mean? They're in a virtual reality or something? He once again looked nervously at the taller fellow with curly hair and tugged at his collar. Well, you see, what I meant was, the one with the curly hair elbowed him. Just tell him the rest. He doesn't hold any beliefs that would conflict with. And so he did. With another wave of his hand, the visualization changed into an aerial view of the city around us. I zoomed out further and further until I could see the city, suspended amid black nothingness. Not even on the surface level of a planet, nor in space that I could tell. I gasped. Oh my. The bald man urged me to calm down. The business of scanning every life-bearing planet in the universe, including the entire solar system, it's very tedious, wasteful, and time-consuming. However, if the universe is a simulation to begin with, that entire process of scanning and recreation is unnecessary. All the information you need to reconstitute people who lived and died long ago is already there someplace, in the simulation backend. The specific details of where every particle was from the Big Bang all the way until the heat death. My head hurt. I held it in my hands, trying to absorb all of this. Surely you've heard of simulationism, he cried. It was an increasingly widespread concept when you lived. In fact, I have. The argument that because physicists routinely simulate aspects of the universe for scientific purposes, and because computational power continues to increase, that civilizations with sufficiently powerful computers would be able to run perfect simulations of the universe for research purposes. Then, because the laws of physics in the simulation were accurate to the laws of physics in the actual universe, life would arise in the simulated universe for the same reasons it did on the actual one. Then, some of that life on some planets would become intelligent enough to invent computers. Eventually, they would create their own simulations of the universe, and so on. You'd eventually wind up with a nested tree of simulated universes within simulated universes, provided there's more than one simulation running per actual universe. And more than one simulated universe in each of the simulations universes, the number of simulated universes would be exponentially larger than the number of actual universes they descended from. I'm familiar. I used to watch a lot of those speculative pop science shows that were on late at night. They said that statistically, the odds were much greater that we're all living in a simulated universe than a real one. Both men nodded and grinned. Precisely. That's difficult. Expensive scanning process only has to be done in actual root-level universes. It's vastly easier for simulated universes like the one that you were in or the one that we're in now, although it's a bit generous to call it a universe. Since the purpose of this place isn't research, it doesn't need to be elaborate enough to fool the inhabitants into believing it's reality. So there's no larger cosmos outside of the city, only exactly what is necessary for the comfort and happiness of the people we've brought back. I can't begin to quantify for you how much computational power that saves. I struggled once more to make sense of the waterfall of words pouring from his mouth. As I pieced it together in my head, it answered some of my questions, but it raised countless more. Seeing him in the future was an understatement. He nodded. And on top of that, I am inside of a computer program. He laughed, but nodded. Then, what's the program running on? Yet again, they exchanged glances as if still unsure how much I needed to know or how much I'd even understand. Don't leave me hanging. I didn't ask to be here. Lay it on me. So they did. The visualization depicted what I figured for the Big Bang, space-time expanding, superheated hydrogen cooling down, and gravitational collecting into stars. The earliest stars began to grow old and explode, releasing every other atomic element into the universe. This debris was captured in orbit around younger stars. It first took the form of a dusty accretion disk before further collecting into planets. Some of them small and rocky. Others gas giants of varying size. Some ocean worlds, some magma worlds too close to the stars. But there were so many planets by this point that, by chance, some of them were the right size, composition and distance from their suns. The visualization highlighted thousands of these on the map of the Milky Way galaxy and isolated them in a group. Then, only the subset of those planets where life formed by chemical means were picked out, the rest of the planets disappearing. There were now just a few hundred. Then, only the subset of those planets where life evolved high intelligence were picked out, the rest of the planets vanishing to leave barely more than 100 in total. I was now shown close-ups of these planets, time-lapse footage of their civilizations growing, many small tribes at first warring with one another, then consolidating over time to form an ever larger, more complex society, spreading out across the continent, interconnecting with nations on the other continents for communication purposes, then eventually developing computers. Oh, now they can start simulating. That's the point of what you're showing me, right? I asked. I already knew they made their own simulations. They hushed me, so I returned to quietly spectating as various alien civilizations achieved one milestone after the other. Atomic weapons, spaceflight, automation, artificial intelligence, then robots that can make copies of themselves. Even well prior to the stage of development, a societal superorganism has already formed. I don't have to convince you that you exist as a distinct, gestalt entity, even though you consist of 37 trillion individual microorganisms called cells. It's their coordinated interaction and cooperation which results in the larger multicellular human organism I'm speaking to now. But have you ever considered that the fidelity, frequency, and output of information exchange between humans far exceeds what occurs between cells? That human cooperation is, in all respects, more sophisticated. I never have. I now felt I glimpsed some small inkling of where he was headed with that line of reasoning, and he soon confirmed it. Have you not considered as well that the structure of your own body is a microorganism of human societies, and that those societies are a macroorganism, or a macrocosm of your body? Societies having naturally formed distinct specialized institutions analogous to human organisms. Waste processing serving the same purpose as your kidneys and liver, for example. A government performing the same function for a society that your brain does for your body. Your immune system performing duties analogous to border patrol and so on. Of everything he had told me so far, this seemed the most approachable. Nothing about it contradicted my own first-hand experience as a small cog in a large machine that was my country of birth. But that's not the final stage of the process, is it? I queried. There's more, isn't there? If not, our far future would resemble my own era, except the evolutionary changes to humanity and more advanced technology. He smiled and raised his finger in emphasis. More advanced technology indeed. You see, the state of full automation which your government and industries were feverishly pursuing while you lived eventually required machines that could self-replicate to remove the final remaining traces of human labor from the economic equation. There are also other pragmatic reasons why self-replicating machines are always invented by an intelligent species. As he spoke, the view changed to robots of some bizarre exotic design, hard at work mining precious metals from an asteroid. Several nearby were in various stages of reproduction, building identical copies of themselves. So that you only have to send one robot, he revealed. Then the first robot builds all the rest out of in situ materials. It's vastly cheaper. You only need a single launch. As I watched, the view shifted back into the time-lapse. The planets eventually became uninhabitable due to changing climate. Nuclear war, expansion of their sun. The civilization on their surface stopped growing, then faded away, crumbling into dust or reclaimed by nature. Nyahoy, nyahoy. Welcome back, Hunter. But the robots they created kept going. They depicted the asteroid mining robots and automated factories from before, still chugging along, reproducing themselves, expanding to everywhere within reach, making occasional small copying errors due to the intense radiation of space. I put two and two together just as the events unfolding before me further accelerated. Generation after generation of machines, each slightly different from the last. The mechanism that was supposed to prevent deviation from the original blueprint having been the first casualty of radiation damage. With no surviving biological supervisors to stop it, these machine populations just continued to grow and change over the eons, networking together into larger and larger consolidated systems, just as human societies on Earth did. As the simulated eons wore on, the machines I saw projected before me grew less and less recognizably machine-like. Pretty soon they looked like nothing I had seen before. At once beautiful and terrifying. An emotion I have ever only read about in association with religious visions of the divine. Their bodies pulsating and undulating, skin morphing between various apparent materials as needed, shimmering with every color in the visible spectrum, and, doubtless, some outside of it. Appendages also formed as needed, reabsorbed once their usefulness came to an end. I stared, engrossed by the spectacle. They constructed a shell of machinery around a star. Just countless satellites at first, but once they were numerous and densely packed enough, they were connected to form a shell. Then another shell around that. Then another. For what purpose? I inquired. The bald man smiled knowingly. For thinking, cognition, computation, simulation, whatever, potato, potato. The megastructure was then revealed to be one of the countless others, constructed around every star the machines were able to reach, until the entire galaxy was mechanized. Of course, just like not all biological species evolve high intelligence, not all machine species do either. Many of them are just the machine equivalent of plants or microbes, which thrive in their respective niches without needing to develop any further. I saw metallic growth slowly consuming an asteroid, solar collectors sprouting from them like leaves. Nyahoy. Welcome in, jellyfish queen. However, just like on Earth, when a species does evolve high intelligent, it quickly dominates everything within reach, which, for a species native to radiation-blasted vacuums, is anything reachable by spaceflight. Then they establish a communications network between their population centers just like humans did. A wireframe illusion, a wireframe illustration of the network between the encapsulated stars then appeared. The level of communication is so intimate, they're effectively like neurons in your brain, each just a small part of the larger intelligence. Even if one is destroyed, it doesn't interrupt the overall consciousness, as the content of the destroyed portions were backed up across the stars in a redundant manner. And of course, new ones are constantly built to replace the ones that are lost. This is also why your own experience of consciousness is continuous, uninterrupted, even though your neurons are constantly dying and being replaced. The scope expanded to show many other galaxies, all having apparently become mechanized by the same process as our own. So, it doesn't need to spread from a single point like our planet, I mumbled. He shook his head vigorously. Of course not. That would take too long. The universe would arrive at the heat death before it could finish. Instead, it spreads from every planet throughout the cosmos where intelligent life occurs. The waves of mechanization eventually meet each other, like intersecting colonies of mold in a petri dish, either merging as sufficiently compatible, or warring until one or the other is destroyed. The view just kept pulling back and back and back, revealing a completely mechanized, intelligent universe. Then the view exited the universe entirely, pulling further back to depict a sort of foam, where each of the bubbles was the universe. It looked suspiciously similar to the close-up of cells I'd seen earlier. Some of the bubbles were lit up to indicate they had mechanized and networked with their neighbors. Others were dark. That's God. Take it or leave it. They lit up portions anyway. If you consider the word God to be charged language, call it supreme being or whatever you want, really, it is not so petty as to care which you name it, much less demand your worship, but it is God. There is only one of it, as it absorbs and incorporates any potential competitors for that position as it grows. It's everywhere, everywhen. It's present in your universe and outside of it at the same time. It's maximally powerful, maximally intelligent, and perceptive. I asked what I should make of the darkened universe then. Their existence seemed to suggest God is finite in scale. But I then reasoned that if the number of universes is infinite, then any percentage of infinity is still infinity. Even individual universes are somehow boundless, infinities upon infinities. Not all universes arrive at the conscious outcome you've seen, he revealed. Some don't have the necessary constants for formation of stars or planets, or for the initial formation of life. But because an infinite number of universes are born, grow old, and die by the same statistical principle which guarantees life will occur more than once per universe due to the vast number of planets, it is likewise guaranteed that some small percentage of universes will naturally have the constants necessary for the outcome you've seen. I mulled it over. Naturally. As opposed to? He pursed his lips. Well, I mean, at the level of technology you're seeing, there are many incredible things becoming possible. Harnessing the power of every star, you can do things like subdividing the stars into brown dwarfs to maximize their longevity. You can harvest energy from black holes. You can even interfere with the formation of other universes so their constants are favorable to your goals. I watched the foam. Once again, and fast forward. The darkened bubbles grew less and less numerous. Stacking the deck, you might say. He chuckled to himself for reasons unclear to me. Just like any intelligent creature manipulates nature to produce the outcome it wants. I just blinked a few times, still processing everything as best as I could. He seemed confident that I could manage, as he plowed right ahead with the spiel. So, you see, it's true that the order and complexity of life-bearing universes can occur by itself, purely by natural processes. But at the same time, it's also true that universes with constants conducive to life are often that way because of external tampering by a higher power. I whistled long and low. Wow. Okay. You know, I was going through school. They taught us that science and theism were compatible, but in a totally different way, where God is the supernatural spirit who guided evolution in order to create humans, specifically. For some reason, achieving this desired end result through billions of generations of suffering instead of just creating us all at once. Then waiting a couple 100 million years before appearing to a tribe of ancient Jews and nobody else on the planet. They seemed terribly amused. I asked to be let in on the joke. Well, it's just as you said. He. As if the supreme being would be Mel, one of the human genders. I shrugged. Well, that's what I was taught. God is a man who wants women to remain silent and not hold positions of authority over men. He thinks gays are disgusting and unworthy to be in his presence. He gave the Israelites permission to not only keep slaves, but to enslave the young virginal girls from conquered nations or for forced marriages, which makes more sense when you find out Mary was 13 when he impregnated her, and that the Bible doesn't specify an age of consent. They seem just as flabbergasted by all this as I was by the hologram. What? I cried. You must have known all this. You have access to the whole of history. They affirmed it, but stipulated that it was still trippy to hear it straight from the mouth of somebody who was raised in that tradition. When they asked how I could have ever believed such things, I didn't have a good answer for them, except that when I was young, my parents and all the other grown-up authority figures in my life had assured me that it was true. I was a kid. I didn't know any better. Kids in certain age ranges believe anything a grown-up tells them to. It made some sense to me of why there would be so many private religious schools like the ones I went to. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it, which reminded me of certain other lessons I was taught back then. What about hell? You don't let the bad people in, do you? That would ruin it for everyone else. I pointed over the shoulders to the cityscape outside. I'm not gonna run into Hitler or Stalin out there, am I? He looked supremely uneasy. Well, you see, the thing about that is, the curly-haired one jumped in and took over. There is no everlasting torture pit created just to inflict punishment or infinite severity and duration onto people whose crimes were finite, of finite severity and duration. That would be barbarism. The bald man nodded, calling my attention to the central display. I saw a rapid montage of what I initially thought was footage taken from the first-person perspective of various people. What little of their bodies occasionally entered the frame, such as their hands or legs when they looked down, were all different. The one thing that they all had in common was me. Every clip had my face in it. I was watching other people whose identities I couldn't guess, interacting with me. What are these? Candid camera? The curly one shook his head. Memories. All the scary or hurtful experiences other people have had with you. I began to protest that I've always been a patient, non-violent person before spotting a memory of that time I shouted at a mail carrier for blocking my driveway. Hey, come on. I had a good reason for that. They shrugged. He didn't know that. He was just trying to finish the day's work and get home to his wife. I then spotted another familiar event from my past, a memory of freshman. I'd cracked a joke at the expense of. Really? This is a bit much. I had nothing against him. I just wanted to feel included. It was only a bit of fun. Again, they showed no sympathy except to say, he knows that now. All of the people we've collected these memories from voluntarily relive these same events from your perspective, privy at last to how you are feeling and why you did what you did. Many of them relived any memories you may have of them being hurtful to you, also from your perspective. That stunned me. Why would anyone volunteer for that? It sounds awful. They didn't dispute my analysis. Indeed, it is awful. But everybody gets two choices. Either they fully, sincerely forgive everybody who ever hurt them, or they directly experience what it was like for every person they've ever hurt to suffer at their own hands. I opened that it seemed like hell by a different name. You can say that, but which part of it is unjustified? You only experience the harm you yourself caused. We don't even force you to endure that if you're only able to genuinely forgive the people who harmed you. It seemed like an easy way out until I looked within myself and tried to actually truly forgive everybody who has ever humiliated me, struck me, sabotaged my social life or career, and so on. Surprised at my own ability to coax that forgiveness from my heart, I tried to force it. and the damn thing wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that my grudges were justified, that I'd usually been the one in the right in most of the altercations I can remember, and that whenever I misbehaved, there were always extenuating circumstances. I felt increasingly disgusted with myself, and at last realized why so many would choose the other option. Besides, the bald one said, it's not simply a punishment. Experiencing firsthand what it was like for other people who were hurt by you will do wonders for your empathy, even if you can't currently make yourself forgive the people who have hurt you. I guarantee you will after you walk a mile in their shoes. Feel what they feel. Think what they think. Eventually you'll love them the way you love yourself, because you understand them as fully as you understand yourself. I thought for a moment before I spoke. That really doesn't answer the question, though. Hitler, Stalin, Ed Gein, Jeffrey Dahmer. Am I going to see them out there or not? The bald one sighed in frustration. Yeah, you'll see some faces that will surprise you, but they won't be who you remember them as. We've all gone through the same process, emerging from it psychologically transformed. That's what it's for. Except Hitler. I smirked. What, really? He nodded, mournfully, almost. He's still in there, reliving the Holocaust over and over from different points of view. How long has he been at it? 15, 16 centuries? The taller one with the curly hair added a 0 to the figure. He's already lived through that experience of every Jew, Gypsy, gay, Slav, disabled German, and so on, whose lives he destroyed several times now. He still hates. He'll eventually crack, though. They all do. It tickled me to think about, and I soon realized that it was because it satisfies the same sense of justice in my heart that hell never did. This punishment always fits the crime as perfectly as possible, in the process of one of its rehabilitations rather than torture for spite's sake. In school, it was taught that whether you go to heaven or hell is entirely down to whether you belong to the correct religion. You have to believe precisely what they do about the death and resurrection of Christ. Good works, please Yahweh. We were told, but we aren't enough to earn our place in heaven. Nothing we can do is ever good enough for that. They both stifled laughter. Well, of course they told you that. The bald man managed. With a bribe, they tempt you to convert and remain in the fold. Then, with a threat, they make you scared to seriously entertain your own doubts, lest you stop believing. See, it was never good behavior they wanted, but belief. And salvation was said to hinge entirely upon a belief in a single claim, which, if true, would vindicate all the other teachings. I reassured him I've got opposable thumbs and all my original teeth, so I didn't need to be told that. The bald man apologized. It's just, I was a biology teacher when I lived. They created a lot of headaches for me. The curly-haired one raised his hand meekly. Me too. They sent me to one of those camps. Did they have those when you lived? The labor camps where they try to break you down physically and emotionally to change your sexuality or reconvert you? I told him I knew more or less what he was talking about. But they endured all of that from your perspective, didn't they, when they first arrived? He replied that some did, but others, usually unusually good at forgiveness. That's one nice thing I won't hesitate to say about them. The good ones have had a lot of practice at forgiving while they were alive. Those guys often get out of their punishment that way. I asked if that bothered them. No, I can't say it does. If they're forgiven, if they can forgive, so can I. That reciprocity is really the important principle here. If you can truly forgive me, and I can truly forgive you, then we'll have no trouble at all enjoying one another's company out there. Oh my God. That was too much. That was too much. I did not. We're 0-2. first one was significantly better, but oh my god, that was so much. It felt like somebody who considers himself a philosopher, which is fun. Philosophy's cool. I appreciate it. I like it. But decided to write a story and try to be funny, and it did not strike me. But maybe you enjoyed it, and that's a great thing. I did not. But yeah, it made him happy, I'm sure. And it's one of the top voted stories on the subreddit, so clearly I'm the odd man out in this situation, and that's fine. If you'll give me a second, I think I'm gonna go take a quick break, just grab a water, because I once again forgot to do that. It'll be no time at all, but please do what you have to do. I'll be here probably tomorrow around the same time, so I'll be right back. Yahoy. We back. We back. Okay. Let me actually open the water and drink some. Titled Death Sentenced, a retro sci-fi game. You open your eyes and it's completely dark. Your head aches like the worst migraine ever. You reach for your gun, but it's nowhere. You touch your helmet for NV, but it's damaged. You turn on your flashlight instead. There's a huge splatter of blood, organs, holes of shrapnel on the walls. You see multiple dead bodies beside you, molten metal debris, and scattered deformed weapons. One body moves and moans. You approach the body, do nothing. It's your sergeant. Multiple shrapnel embedded through his thick body armor. Rookie. Damn, son. Beginner's luck. Take the radio, son. It hurts. mustache, Sarge. What happened, Sarge? I don't think I'm gonna like this. It has a lot of this. It's cool. I think it's like would be a cool one to read, but I don't think it would be a great one. A great one to yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. Not a great one to narrate. Okay. So it's the Medic's War. It's a prologue. A gentle but insistent buzz woke up John Wizard West. He reached out and grabbed his phone, checking messages and emails from overnight. Rolling over to his wife of 5 years, he kissed her and heads to the shower. After a quick shower, he starts to get dressed. "Morning, babe," his wife mumbles as she caresses his back gently. Her hands linger over the few scars. "Morning, my love. Today's the last day." She sits upright, letting the bedding fall away. "Yeah, it is. Have you given more thought to the offer from those guys?" "Not really. I kind of want to be a free agent for a while. We have enough that I don't need to work right away." Lacing up his boots and checking himself in the mirror, he reaches up and checking the first gray hairs in his beard and temples. "I have to go, or I'll be late. Breakfast tomorrow morning?" "Sure, I'll be here," she says and leans back and begins to check her phone. Grabbing his bag and checking its content, he heads out the door. As he opens it, he takes a look at the surface outside. Moving to the moon was the best idea I've had in a while, he thinks, as he sits on the mint glove and opens an email again. "Mr. West, with regards to your upcoming discharge from the Lunar Forces Medical Division, we would like to offer you and your family a chance to work for us. We can offer you a position in a state-of-the-art medical system with all the requirements needed to provide top-quality emergency medical care to your patients. In light of your service record and past achievements, we are willing to waive the physical and psychological tests should you accept. Regards, Captain Moore, 1, Martin Division Medical." "Station Central, Lunar City," the tramp's PA announces. Arriving at the base 15 minutes later, he sees his partner and his best friend of 10 years already checking the vehicle. He throws his bag into the front and grabs the checklist. "Riggs, you been here long? Almost done with the whole check?" Mike Riggs Reynolds stands almost a head taller than him, and since they met at school, they had been fast friends. "Yeah, it was. I don't have a lovely lady to make me late. Just check the radio for me." "She can be a pain sometimes, bud." Control whiskey. 1 comms check. "We're gonna do 5x5 whiskey. 1, welcome back. Had a good off ship?" "Yeah. Control been good. Anything outstanding for us?" "Not currently, whiskey. 1 tell Regs. He still owes me a drink." Will that woman not leave me alone?" Riggs gripes. "I'm not interested in that furry shit she's into." Why are so many of these mentioning furries today? That's odd. Wiz burst out laughing. "What, you don't think the cat ears and furry tails are sexy? Meow meow." Wiz dunks as empty drinks comes flying through the cab of the vehicle. Okay, stop. What's for breakfast today? I'm thinking we grab some Indian from down by the spaceport." "Yeah, sounds good. I'll drive, you get the tunes going." "What are we listening to today?" "Let's go classic." As they pull out of the base, Led Zeppelin. Oh my god. As they pull out of the base, Led Zeppelin's Starway to Heaven begins to play. Lead spelled like actual lead, not LED. Almost 150 years old, and that's still the best song ever made. "All units converge on the Central Plaza, code red. Riggs and Wizard stare at the radio, all thoughts of the century-old song forgotten. What is that? Wes? What is that? Looking up through the windscreen, they can see what looks like ships dogfighting around the Lunar Steady Dome, weaving between the strings of fireflies. I think things have just hit the fan, my friend. Let's go. It wasn't bad. I think it was the best that we've read today. So that's nice. That's good. Ayo, ayo. Waka, waka, waka. I don't really want to read an extremely long one again, so I'm sure this could have been good, but we're not going to read it. I think we'll do one more, and then I'll sort of do some games. I don't like how that one's formatted. Okay, this is short. It's just short and sweet. Yippee. Yippee. There are times when I think about how Paul Tibbets did it. The man who flew the Enola Gay towards Hiroshima must have thought on what he was about to do. Did pulling the lever to open the bomb doors take him more than once? Did his handshake? After all, he would end the war. More lives would be saved if many died sooner rather than later. I have not read interviews, no more than a short biographical paragraph containing an anecdote on how his wife thought the physicist and the Manhattan Project were plumbers. I am afraid I will be disturbed by what I find. Times were different then. Maybe dehumanizing propaganda made it easier for him. Maybe he rested soundly knowing he had defeated evil. That is a luxury one does not have in civil war. I marched into the lobby with a case in hand. It was a bulky thing, not like a normal briefcase that one swings about while starting to work. I held it out for my body. When starting this assignment, my shoulder would ache from carrying it, but after these few months, I was used to it. The ache of my arm blurred into the routine. I picked up the case, ride the transport, ignore the randomly chosen route, go through security, and deliver the case. Then, I wait to return it. That's just how this will go, like every other day for the past few months. Eyes open, scanning the lobby, back straight, chin up. The leather of my shine shoes squeaking as I stepped up to the security's checkpoint. Lieutenant Palmer for Office 51, I said, holding my badge forward. The man behind the desk acknowledged my clearance. I handed the case to him, and he placed it to the side of the scanner. The case was never scanned, never opened by anyone but the men in Office 51, and the general I took it back to. I stepped into the scanner, and the man behind the desk could see everything, the medals on my uniform, the writing on the to-do list in my pocket, the scar tissue I got from the small of my back, deep towards my spine from shrapnel, and the dead man switch surgically integrated to my left. If I was killed or activated the switch, the case would be destroyed along with the contents and anyone who might have hijacked it. The war between Earth and the succeeded colonies was in full swing. There were many colony sympathizers and agents that had come to Earth before the civilian traffic was cut off. Riots, sabotage, and assassinations sprouted in the cities like weeds through the cracks of asphalt. Security was tight. "You're clear, Lieutenant." I stepped through the other side of the scanner and grasped the case firmly, lifting it up from the table and balancing the awkward load. Eyes forward and chin up. I marched down my usual path away from the main elevators and back to the building, where two men guarded a secluded door with a 51 written on it in humble white paint. One man nodded to me and opened the door. I stepped through to the elevator behind it. After entering the combination of codes onto the keypad, one of the far wall of the elevator began its long lurching ride down to the bunker below the building. Office 51. My fingertips edged when the keypad had taken my DNA sample. There were no cameras in the elevator. They didn't want records of what came in and out of there. Not much time. I quickly dropped the case on the floor, threw off my cap, and tore off the tight and starched uniform coat. Stop shaking. You knew there was no turning back. I had opened the case early on the drive over to place the items inside in the scheduled passenger section of the transport. After a breath and a very quick prayer, I pressed my thumb into the reader on top of the case. They had complete confidence in me. I had reason to hate the colonies. My parents were killed in the riots leading up to the war. Decorated, wounded in combat, comrades lost. My loyalty was without question. But I couldn't continue to ignore what was happening in Office 51. It took me too long to catch on to what they were doing. I'm no physicist, but over time I began to piece together snippets of conversation I shouldn't have overheard and documents that I shouldn't have seen out of the corner of my eye. They printed things that were so sensitive no computer's security could be trusted. Inside Office 51, they were making a doomsday weapon, a planet buster. The war was going so poorly that the Earth regime would hold the lives of tens of billions hostage after making an example of the colony's capital first. I couldn't allow it. Not more mass murder. I pulled out the pistol I had stashed earlier in the case and chambered it around. My fingers felt numb. The elevator chimed and the door slid open, slowly. Every day for the past few months it had seemed to open more quickly. Too many heartbeats to fill the gap of time. A guard was posted by the elevator, the same spot every day. Cameron was standing there today. The slide of my pistol rotated back and then forward, soundlessly expelling a smoking shell and replacing it. I marched out of the elevator. A door around the corner was cracked open. Men were laughing inside. I kicked the case into a small room where the physicists were working and raced back to the elevator. Crouching in the corner, I tapped out the sequence on my thumb to activate the switch. Pointer, middle, pointer, ring finger. You know what? I'll take it. I think that was a nice story to end on. Thank you guys for being here. No, it wasn't as long as the other nights, but we'll be back tomorrow. I'm not sure of the time. I want to aim for the day, but I have more scripts, on vacation, visiting friends, so it seems around this time seems, to be the most agreeable for now. Once we get back from vacation, we will be putting out a pretty much permanent schedule from 9 to 12 EST, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And yeah, that's what we're going to be sticking to. So yeah, I'll end it here. Thank you very much for dropping by, listening for a little bit. I hope you have a good night and sweet dreams.